know that you've been sitting here on trial today, but could you go ahead and tell the jury who you are?
My name is Dawson.
Ms. Dawson, we've talked a lot about the accident when Ms. Sullivan lost her life. Can you tell us how you were involved in that accident?
I was the driver of the car.
Before we talk about that night, go ahead and give the jury a chance to get to know you. Do you go to school?
Yeah, I go to Calkins College. I major in urban studies with a minor in linguistics. It's kind of a weird combination, but they're both things I'm interested in.
Ms. Dawson, what do you do? What do you want to do after you graduate?
I want to go to law school. I have ever since I was in second grade, and I was the attorney for my class's mock trial play.
Now, how did you know Ms. Sullivan?
We share a major. I met her my sophomore year. It was really great talking to her. Whenever I would tell her I wanted to use the law to help develop and stabilize urban areas, she would listen and she would understand. Most of my other friends, their eyes just kind of glazed over and they would nod, but she really got me.
Well, what did you and Vanessa plan to do on September 24th on her birthday?
She was going to see Chatterbox, this band, my favorite band, and she was going down there to see them, and she said I could come.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how that day and night went. Now, how did the day start for you?
With an interview, a lunch interview. It didn't go so well.
So what did you do after this interview?
Chucky's was right there, and so to be more convenient, nobody had to drop me off and pick me up. I just went over there after my interview.
Okay, now, Ms. Dawson, just so we're all clear, what is Chuggy's?
Chucky's is a bar.
All right. So about what time did you get to Chuggy's?
About 2, like I said, when my interview was over.
So what time were you supposed to meet Ms. Sullivan?
Around 7.
So what did you do in between 2 and 7?
Well, when I got to the bar, I wasn't feeling too hot. Like I said, I had my interview and it didn't really go well. But I saw a friend of mine, Jordan James, bartending, and it was so nice to see a familiar face after that. I just went up to him and then started talking to him.
All right, so what happened when Ms. Sullivan arrived?
We moved to get a better table to see the band.
Now, when you say we, was it just you and Ms. Sullivan, or was there anyone else with her?
Oh no, she brought her best friend, Taylor Dawson.
Right, so the three of you went to get a table. What happened next?
We were all sitting there talking. As getting to know Taylor, I found out that she also wanted to go to Calvin's Law. And then I decided to go back and talk with Jordan some more. Apparently they didn't really get to see each other a lot, and I figured they'd want to catch up.
Ms. Dawson, were the three of you drinking?
Yes.
So did you make any plans for how to get home, have a designated driver, or anything like that?
Well, when Taylor came in, she said something to me about being the designated driver, so I thought it was going to be her.
So after you let Ms. Hobson and Ms. Sullivan have a couple minutes alone, you spoke with Jordan again. What happened next?
Well, then about then the band came on to perform.
All right. Now, how many sets did the band play?
They did 2.
Okay. So what happened after the first one?
Well, after the first set, I went to go see if I could talk to them. They're a favorite band, and I just really wanted to get to know them. And so I told them it was Vanessa's birthday. And they came over, and I mean, it turns out Vanessa and Taylor already knew them, but I was still really excited.
All right, so what happened next?
I'm not sure she was invited, but Taylor ended up going on stage and singing with them. I was really impressed and a little bit jealous, but when she went up there, I realized she was drunk.
So you said Ms. Hobson was acting drunk. What about Ms. Sullivan? How was she acting at this point in time?
She wasn't much better off.
So what did you do when you saw the two of them acting that way?
Well, I figured that I was in the best state, and so I was most likely to be designated driver. So I switched to sodas.
All right. So what happened after Ms. Hobson was singing and after you switched to drinking soda?
Like I said, I switched to the sodas, and then Taylor came back, and around then we decided it was time to go.
All right. So about what time did you get ready to leave Chuggy's?
I would say 12:45.
Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about what happened while you were driving that night, Ms. Dawson. What was the weather like?
It was awful. It was dark and it was raining really, really hard.
All Right, now, what was happening now? Excuse me, what roads did you take to get to the cell phone?
Well, when we were leaving, Vanessa was telling me how she wasn't going to make her curfew, and her mom was going to get really angry. And so I figured since she brought me all the way down here, the least I could do was get her back in time for her curfew. So we took Canyon Road because it was quicker.
Ms. Dawson, could you explain or describe Canyon Road for the jury?
Canyon Road is this long kind of winding road with guardrail that doesn't extend all the way on one side and then trees on either side.
Were there any lights?
There was only one. It was coming from this house on my left, the front porch.
Ms. Dawson, what was happening inside the car while you were driving on this windy road in the rain?
It was chaotic. Taylor was yelling, almost like at the top of her lungs, and then she was singing, and she kept turning the radio up, and it was already really loud, and she kept turning it up and talking to Vanessa. It was really chaotic.
Ms. Dawson, what happened right before the accident?
Like I said, I remember seeing the light, and I remember thinking that it was so strange at that time of night. And then above Taylor and over the radio, I hear Vanessa scream. And so I turn back to look, and I see something coming at me from the other side of the lane, and so I swerved to miss it, and I felt my heart go into my stomach, and we were off the road and we were going down the embankment, and so I tried to get us back on the road, and I guess I overcorrected, because the next thing I knew, we were spinning, and everything got kind of quiet. And I guess we hit something because we stopped.
Ms. Dawson, what did you do when the car stopped?
I got out, I remembered the light, and I started running towards the light in hopes that somebody could help us.
Did help ever come?
Yes, the owner of the house, his name was Norton, and he came and he told me he'd already called an ambulance.
Right, now, Ms. Dawson, did you speak to any police officers that evening?
Only one, the one that ran some tests on me,
What sort of tests?
called them field sobriety tests.
Was it just you and the officer at the scene?
No. Vanessa's mother was there as well.
Do you know what Mrs. Sullivan does for a living?
She's the best prosecutor for the state.
Did you speak to her?
While I was getting these tests done, she was yelling at me, told me that she was going to put me in jail.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, these statements have already come in under Officer Foster. They're an excited utterance under Rule 8032.
Overruled.
Ms. Dawson, what did Vanessa Sullivan's mother say to you?
She said she was going to put me in jail for the rest of my life for what I had done to her daughter. And I tried to tell her it was an accident, that there was a deer, but she wouldn't listen to me. And the officer, he was telling me how to do these tests at the same time, and nobody would listen.
Pass witness. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Dawson, when you and Vanessa first made plans to go to Chuggy's, you agreed to be the designated driver, isn't that right?
She told me I might have to be.
In fact, you agreed that it was worth it to be the designated driver in exchange for seeing Chatterbox, didn't you?
If I did have to be the designated driver, sure, it'd be worth it. They're my favorite band ever.
But despite agreeing to be the designated driver, when you got to the bar, you proceeded to order drinks anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, I did order drinks. I wasn't sure at that time.
And you didn't just drink in the afternoon. You continued to drink throughout the night, didn't you?
Yes.
In fact, you went so far as to tell Jordan James to make them strong and keep them coming, didn't you?
Yeah, I said that to him.
And in fact, you had so much to drink throughout the night, you can't even keep track of exactly how many drinks there was, can you?
No, I can.
You know exactly how many drinks you had.
I'm pretty sure of it.
Would you be able to give me an exact number?
Yeah.
Throughout the night, you made statements such as, you think you had 3 drinks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you don't know for sure how many that was.
I was pretty sure.
You don't know an exact number. You think you knew how many drinks. Is that right?
About my thought process, I'm pretty sure of it.
Miss Dawson, as the night went on, you realized that Vanessa and Taylor were both rather drunk, and you were most likely to be the designated driver, is that right?
Yes, and that's when I switched to soda.
However, after that, you still proceeded to order another drink. Isn't that right?
Yes, a tequila sunrise, because I didn't want the night to end. I was having so much fun, and it was the last drink before I started the soda.
And so despite knowing that you would soon have to drive, you chose to drink anyway.
Yeah, my last drink.
And while you were in the bar, the server even went so far as to suggest that you call a cab.
Objection, Your Honor, to your statement. We assume we're outside the earshot of the jury.
Yes.
The statement of the server is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
I respect. Your Honor, this is not going to show the truth of the matter asserted. This is going to show the effect on the listener and to show that Danny Dawson did not call a cab and her actions.
Overruled.
Miss Dawson, towards the end of the night, the server even suggested that you call a cab. Isn't that right?
Yes, he said that I told him I was going to be the designated driver, but by then I had about a drink an hour, and I know my limits, and I knew I was fine as long as I switched to the soda.
You didn't call a cab, did you, Miss Dawson?
No.
And when you, Miss Hobson, and Miss Sullivan got outside the bar, you were offered a ride in a cab, weren't you?
Sam Blind, he's the usual taxi for me when I was at Chuggy's. He offered me a ride.
You didn't take that ride, did you, Miss Dawson?
No, I told him I was fine, and he told me to drive safe and have a great night.
You instead chose to get into that car, didn't you?
Yes.
You chose to drive not only yourself, but Miss Hobson and Miss Sullivan as well, didn't you?
I did.
And once you were in the car, you then proceeded to ignore the speed limit, didn't you?
Well, I was trying to get Vanessa back on time, if that's what you're referring to. I was going a little bit faster, but I really wanted to help her after she brought me down to see my favorite band.
So knowing the speed limit, you purposely drove faster than that.
Yes, I was going a bit quicker than the speed limit.
You also ignored Taylor Hobson's protest that you slow down, didn't you?
Taylor, she kept saying so many things and singing. I didn't know she was addressing towards me.
But despite ignoring Miss Hobson's protest, you were also worried about the speed, weren't you?
Yes, at one point there was a cop, and I got a little bit worried, and so I started slowing down a bit.
Miss Dawson, as you rounded the curve of Canyon Road where Miss Sullivan died, you knew you were going too fast, didn't you?
I wasn't looking particularly at the speedometer in there, so I can't tell you for sure.
You knew the speed limit on the road, correct?
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
And you knew that you were going over that speed, didn't you?
Like I said, I don't know, I wasn't looking right before I noticed the light, but
You chose to speed on Canyon Road despite being worried about the speed, didn't you?
yeah, I was trying to get Vanessa home.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor?
Nothing further, Your Honor. May Ms. Dawson step down.
Sorry. Defense advocate,
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Ash Norton to the stand. Good afternoon, Doctor. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Dr. Ash Norton.
What do you do for a living?
I'm the professor of medicine at Midland State University, and in addition to that, I'm also the president of the American Board of Forensic Toxicology.
Why are you here today?
I'm here to testify in regards to the breath alcohol concentration test that was performed on Miss Danny Dawson the night of the accident.
How are you qualified to testify about such a thing?
Well, I have a doctorate and a master's in forensic science from Johns Hopkins University. And in addition to that, I'm licensed to operate the Intoxilizer 8000, which is the machine used on Ms. Dawson the night of the accident, and have 7 years of experience as an operator.
When you were asked to draw conclusions about Miss Dawson's case, what information did you have to rely on?
I interviewed Ms. Dawson and got her account of what happened that night. I also looked over Dr. Smith's operator's report and conclusions, and that's the data I had.
Is that the information that experts like you typically use coming to this sort of conclusion?
Yes, it is.
Did you have enough to reach a conclusion?
Yes, I did.
Before we get to what exactly your conclusion was, can you tell the jury a little bit about what methods you used to analyze that data?
I took Ms. Dawson's account of what happened, and I made a timeline of what she drank. I took that timeline and the information it contained and plugged it into a commonly used scientific formula to determine what Ms. Dawson's blood alcohol concentration should have been that night.
When you were collecting that data, about how often did Ms. Dawson have a drink?
About a drink an hour.
And what were your conclusions about what was her blood alcohol content that night?
I concluded that according to this formula, Ms. Dawson's blood alcohol concentration should have been about 0.08.
Now, was that what the Intoxilizer results said?
Not at all. The Intoxilizer's results concluded that her blood alcohol concentration was 0.19.
Well, doctor, how is it that your conclusions are less than half of what the Intoxilizer results were?
Well, there are actually a number of reasons this could be the case. Among them are naturally occurring body alcohol. There could be alcohol in Ms. Dawson's mouth when she was tested. And the Intoxilizer 8000 could have been using an incorrect breath-to-blood ratio.
Doctor, you just gave the jury a lot of different reasons why the Intoxilizer results might be incorrect. I want to take those one at a time. The first thing you mentioned was that there could have been alcohol naturally occurring in Ms. Dawson's body. Can you explain how that could be the case?
Sure. When you're hungry and because of that you have a low blood sugar, your body needs to look to other sources of energy to sustain itself. One way it does this is that the cells in your body go through a process called fermentation, which produces naturally produced body alcohol. And this would increase the reading.
Well, how would natural body alcohol affect the Intoxilizer results?
Well, the Intoxilizer 8000 looks at all the alcohol present in your blood. It doesn't differentiate between the amount you drank or the amount that your body produced. Because of this, this would really skew the results because it would basically increase the amount of alcohol that it actually read in the blood.
Is this natural body alcohol something that could make you drunk?
No, it's not actually.
You mentioned that one thing that could cause this naturally occurring body alcohol is a low blood sugar. Was Ms. Dawson experiencing low blood sugar the night that she was tested?
Yes, she was. You have to remember, when she was tested at 2 a.m., it had been 6 hours since she had her last meal. She was pretty hungry.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation.
Your Honor, the expert has testified that he interviewed Ms. Dawson and drew a timeline of what she had to eat and drink that night. He based his conclusions on this data. The foundation's been laid that he has this knowledge.
What foundation do you believe is lacking?
Your Honor, for the witness to testify exactly that Danny Dawson's blood sugar was in fact low, he would need to have collected some kind of blood sample or have some empirical evidence to present to the jury. A simple interview with the witness and talking about how the witness hadn't eaten for a while isn't enough for this opinion to come onto the record, and it's improper.
May I respond, Your Honor? Although opposing counsel may think he knows what this expert needs, this expert has testified that the data that he collected and the methods he used are reliable and widely used in his field. This expert has laid the proper foundation that he can testify to this matter.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let him testify to it, but you're welcome to cover that on cross if you want to point out that maybe it's not as reliable as you might see that as they're saying it is. But for now, it's overruled.
Dr. Doctor, you were just telling us that you believe that Miss Dawson had low blood sugar. Why is that the case again?
It had been 6 hours since she had eaten. She was hungry. This means she has a low blood sugar.
Another thing that you mentioned was that there might have been some alcohol in Miss Dawson's mouth, and that might have thrown off the test results. How could residual mouth alcohol affect the intoxilizer results?
Now, the Intoxilizer 8000 is supposed to measure the amount of alcohol in your breath. That's the amount of alcohol that has already been processed and is in your system. Alcohol that's in your mouth, it's sitting in your mouth. It hasn't been digested, and it isn't in your system yet. But if you breathe into a sample, alcohol that's sitting in your mouth will go into the sample and contaminate it. And the readings will be higher because it goes from your mouth into the sample.
What kind of things might cause there to be alcohol left in somebody's mouth?
There are a number of reasons. There could be recent dental work. There could be mouthwash or mint usage. But most likely, there could be the symptoms of heartburn, like burping and acid reflux.
Do you know whether or not Miss Dawson was experiencing any of these type of symptoms the night that she was tested?
In fact, she was. Miss Dawson had cheeseburger and fries, and then she had heartburn after this.
The last thing that you mentioned is something called a breath-to-blood ratio. Could you define that for the jury?
When the Intoxilizer 8000 makes a conclusion about the blood alcohol concentration of an individual, it takes the amount of alcohol in somebody's breath and converts it into the amount of alcohol in somebody's blood. As a result, in order to convert the two separate quantities, you need a ratio to equate them.
Is there a standard breath-to-blood ratio that this machine, the Intoxilizer, relies on?
Yes, there is. The Intoxilizer relies on a ratio that's 2,100 milliliters of your breath compared to 1 cubic centimeter of your blood.
Just to give the jury an idea of what these quantities are, could you describe what those two quantities actually look like?
Sure. 2,100 milliliters is about 2.1 liters. That's about the size of a 2-liter bottle of soda like you use at a party. Now, your 1 cubic centimeter of blood, it's about the size of your average playing dice. It's not too big.
And this standard that this machine uses, does it actually apply equally to everyone?
It's not necessarily a standard, so no. It's more of an average. The normal person can have a breath-to-blood ratio ranging from 900 to 1 all the way to 3,400 to 1.
Looking at the low end of that range, what does 900 milliliters look like?
900 milliliters is about the size of the average water bottle you get at a vending machine, about this big.
What about 3,400 milliliters? What does that look like?
3,400 milliliters is about the size of a gallon of milk you'd get while you went grocery shopping.
So you just told this jury that the amount of alcohol that could be in 1 cubic centimeter of somebody's blood could range from the amount that's in a water bottle of their breath to the amount that's in an entire gallon jug of their breath. What would happen if Danny Dawson's breath-to-blood ratio the night that she was tested was on the lower end of this scale, closer to the water bottle size?
Well, first of all, we need to realize it's not even a question of if. Miss Dawson was in the elimination stage of her alcohol processing. At this point, individuals have actually a lower breath-to-blood ratio. So she did have a lower breath-to-blood ratio at this point. Because of this, her alcohol concentration could have been half of what the blood alcohol concentration machine said it was.
Thank you, doctor. Pass the witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Norton, you were hired by the defense prior to today's case, right?
Yes, I was.
So you charged to come up with a conclusion today, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I charged for my services.
And how much did you charge, doctor?
I charged $250 per hour of work that I did, and I worked for about 20 hours.
So you've already made $5,000 just preparing to come to trial today.
Yes, I did.
And in fact, you're making $2,000 more to come and testify right now.
Yes, I did. Again, I am the president of the American Board of Forensic Toxicology. I do have a certain expertise that justifies this.
And all of that money is coming to you from the defendant's attorneys, right?
Yes, that is.
Dr. Norton, I'd like to talk about some problems that you had with Avery Smith's breath to blood ratio and Avery Smith's breath alcohol test that she conducted. You weren't there on September 24th, 2010, were you?
No, I was not there.
You never administered a breath alcohol test to Danny Dawson?
Not to Danny Dawson, no, I have not.
You never took a sample of Danny Dawson's blood, did you?
No, I have not.
So, Doctor, you talked about several possibilities that could have affected the validity of the results. One of them was low blood sugar?
Yes, I did.
You don't have a blood sample to show us today that shows that Danny Dawson's blood sugar was lower than normal, do you?
I don't, but as a professor of medicine, I know that when you don't eat meals at a regular rate and when you're pretty hungry, you do have a low blood sugar. It's common knowledge to somebody in my industry.
But you can't give any empirical evidence to the jury that that was actually the case when Danny Dawson took that test, right?
I can't tell you what his blood sugar was without taking a test, but I can definitely tell you that it was pretty low.
You also said that some types of residual mouth alcohol in her breath could have affected the test negatively, right?
That's correct.
And that wouldn't have meant that she was drunk if she had that mouth alcohol in her mouth.
I never said that wouldn't meant if she was drunk. I would just say that that would have increased the blood alcohol concentration read by the machine.
Excuse me, doctor. And you said that one of the factors that could affect it was acid reflux, right?
Yes.
Also things like burping, vomiting.
Yes.
You also said that the use of mouthwash.
Yes, that's what I said.
Doctor, you talked to Danny Dawson when you were compiling your report, didn't you?
I did.
She told you she didn't remember burping, right?
She said that she didn't remember burping after she was arrested.
So she told you that she didn't remember burping after she was arrested when the test was administered, right?
She didn't remember, not that she didn't.
She said that she didn't remember vomiting either.
No, she did not remember what.
She said she didn't remember if she had acid reflux, right?
Not during that period of time.
During when the test was administered.
That's right.
Doctor, you also mentioned on direct examination that somebody's breath to blood ratio could be different from the one that the machine uses.
That's very correct.
Doctor, you once again didn't have a sample of Danny Davis's blood, did you?
No, but when a person is eliminating alcohol, which she was in the stage of alcohol elimination because she wasn't drinking it anymore, their breath to blood ratio drops. At this point, they have a low breath to blood ratio. It's a systemic thing that's been established by a variety of studies done. I don't need to take a medical test for that. I know because of the point she was at.
But Danny Dawson's breath to blood ratio could have just been naturally higher before taking that test, right?
I'm sure that's a possibility.
And it could have just lowered to the amount of the average of the machine, right?
Again, that's a possibility.
But since you don't have any empirical evidence from September 24th, 2010, you can't show that to the jury, can you?
Actually, the empirical evidence as established by studies does show that blood alcohol, the breath to blood ratio decreases during the elimination stage. That's what the empirical evidence shows.
Now you would agree with me, doctor, that the most important factor determining a blood alcohol concentration is how much alcohol someone's consumed, right?
That's a very important factor.
So to determine that, you asked Danny Dawson about it, didn't you?
I did ask Danny Dawson.
You asked her how many drinks she drank that night.
Yes, I did.
You asked her when she drank them. You asked her what exactly she'd been drinking, right?
Yes.
You didn't ask the waiter at Chuggy's bar how many drinks Danny Dawson had ordered, did you?
No, I did not do that.
You didn't ask Danny Dawson's companion, Taylor Hobson, how many drinks Danny Dawson had drank, did you?
Again, I'm trying to find Danny Dawson's blood alcohol concentration. No, it's Hobson.
Doctor, maybe you were confused by my question. I was asking you if you ever asked Taylor Hobson how many drinks Danny Dawson had drank, and you didn't, did you?
No, I didn't.
You also didn't ask any of the people who were actually at the bar with Danny Dawson that night how many drinks she drank.
No, I just asked Ms. Dawson.
In fact, all of your information on how many drinks the defendant actually consumed came from the defendant, didn't they?
Yes, she drank the drinks.
No further questions at this time?
No redirect, Your Honor. May the witness be excused? Your Honor, at this time, the defense rests its case in chief. We ask her...
Sorry. Your Honor, I apologize. We have one more witness.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The defense will like to call Leslie Roman to the stand.
Good afternoon. Would you introduce yourself to the jury?
Sure. My name is Les Roman.
And what do you do for a living?
Well, I am a vehicle accident reconstruction engineer. I own a firm here in Midlands. We basically reconstruct an accident, determine what happened.
What are some of your qualifications to reconstruct accidents?
Well, I got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. I am a certified professional engineer here in Midlands. I served on the Traffic Advisory Safety Council here in Midlands for over 3 years, and I've owned my own accident reconstruction firm for over 7.
And why were you hired in this case?
I was hired to analyze a traffic accident involving one individual named Danny Dawson.
What sorts of facts and data do you have in this case?
Well, I have access to the arresting officer's fatal traffic report. Basically, everything that happened that night, his narrative. I also am able to go to the vehicle itself and police impound, see what kind of damage was done to it. And of course, I go to the scene of the accident itself, look for skid marks, rutting in the grass, anything that can indicate to me what happened.
Are all of these things sufficient to create conclusions?
Yes.
What were some of the principles and methods you used in making conclusions?
Well, basically, I used the principles of physics, mechanical motion, the way that forces act on free bodies in space, to decide exactly what happened to a car when it lost control, what caused the accident. All of the principles that I use are outlined in the Windsor and Strasbourg article. It's the standard for accident reconstruction.
And are all these theories of physics and mechanics, were all these theories applied reliably in the case of Danny Dawson?
Yes.
All right. So now that we know a bit more about you and what you do, what were the road conditions like on the night of the accident?
The night of the accident, it was pouring down rain. I both remember that myself, and I learned from witness accounts that the visibility was very low on that road.
What did you do after you visited the scene of the accident?
Well, the first step in any accident reconstruction is making a diagram of the accident.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with Defense Exhibit 13? Show the opposing counsel. Your Honor, would you like a copy?
Sure.
Dr. Roman, could you tell us what Defense Exhibit 13 is?
This is the diagram that I made for the case we're talking about now.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of the accident?
Yes, it is.
Do you think the jury find it beneficial to see a larger demonstrative of this?
I would.
Your Honor, may I show demonstrative to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, may the witness step down to demonstrate to the jury?
Your Honor, may I move to see the
Your Honor, may the witness...
Oh, yes. Sorry.
So what happened when Danny Dawson approached the curve in Canyon Road?
Well, what happened was Miss Dawson was traveling northbound on Canyon Road when it's apparent that some kind of obstacle appeared in the road suddenly. We can tell this because of the angle that the car exited the road. It's not consistent with just failure to negotiate a curve or just driving too fast. There's actually an exit angle, which means the car swerved opposite the road and then spent the next several hundred feet, or excuse me, the next 150 feet trying to pull back onto the road.
And what happened next?
Well, what happened was, after an extended period of slowly trying to recorrect into the road, due to the fact that the road was so wet, it's apparent that Miss Dawson overcorrected. That just means that the car lost traction, the tires to the road, and began to spin.
Were there any problems on that road that night?
Well, yes. The road was basically so wet that the tires just lost traction. If you ever...
Objection, Your Honor, or proper opinion.
Your Honor, the witness has already provided the proper foundations for the witness to actually make conclusions and explain exactly what happened in this particular accident?
May I respond? Your Honor, the witness does not have the expertise to clarify that the wetness of the road was indeed, in fact, the cause of the tires swerving on the road.
May I respond?
Sure.
Your Honor, this is an accident reconstructionist. They are trained to take into these many considerations such as the weather, the water. All these things are factored into the consideration of how fast the car was going, or specifically how the stagger was even created.
Overruled.
So after that, how did the car behave?
Right, well, what happened was, if you've ever been out driving when it's kind of icy outside, maybe you hit the gas a little too fast or you hit a patch of ice, you know what it feels like. Basically, the wheel just won't turn the car the direction you want it to go. Your brakes aren't working, your gas isn't working. What happened was the car slid on the road and spun 90 degrees as it went through the opposing lane of traffic. The front end of the car struck a tree and then rotated counterclockwise struck a pole and then rotated counterclockwise into a tree. I'm sorry, that's where I came to rest.
Were you able to calculate exactly how fast the car was going?
Yes, at the time that the car lost control, it was going about 51 miles an hour.
And I understand Officer Foster had a different conclusion. And what accounts for this difference?
Well, Officer Foster usually does really great work. He made a couple of really critical mistakes in this situation that led to him severely overinflating how fast Miss Dawson was going.
And how fast was Miss Dawson going?
Miss Dawson was going about 51 miles an hour.
So what are some of the mistakes that Officer Foster made in his conclusions?
Well, it's not so much what he did as what he didn't do. He didn't take into account the fact that the stationary objects struck by the vehicle are narrow objects. When the object is narrow, the crushing force added to the vehicle is over a very small concentrated area. We have to use a specific formula to adjust for that. Otherwise, it would make the speed seem way higher than it actually was. He didn't do that.
You say there was another problem with the calculations. What was this about?
Yeah, I'm afraid there was. Officer Foster used a drag sled to reach his conclusions about the speed. Normally, drag sleds are great machines to determine what the friction on the road was, but in this case, it wasn't appropriate. He didn't actually go back to the scene of the accident until several hours after it had happened. The road conditions were completely different. There was a lot more friction, and he got a huge overestimation of how much the speed loss was between this point and this point.
Was there a guardrail before the accident?
No, there wasn't. There's no guardrail anywhere along this curve until right here.
Should there have been a guardrail?
You know, I think that there should have been. The way that this road is designed, especially for weather conditions like this, if they ever happened, the lighting on the road, there really should be something here to stop drivers on both sides of the road from accidentally veering off a little bit. It just creates a completely undue risk.
You also talk about the tree. Is it typical for trees to grow this close to the edge of the pavement?
Well, no, it's not. This tree specifically was growing about 2 feet away from the road. In order to be completely safe, we like for there to be at least 10 feet of clearance between the edge of the road and a tree. That's because if a driver, something like this happens and the driver leaves the roadway even just a little bit, we don't want there being an obstacle immediately on the side of the road.
Mr. Roman, what are your final conclusions about the accident?
This accident was not caused by too much speed or failure to control a vehicle. It was caused by an evasive maneuver due to some unexpected obstacle appearing in front of the car.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Thank you.
Cross.
May I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Roman, you're not here for free, are you?
No.
And you were paid $2,000 just to sit in that chair today, correct?
No, that's not true.
So you testifying today, you're not getting paid $2,000.
I am, but it would be incorrect to say that it's just for sitting in the chair. I did a lot of work in this case, spent a lot of my own personal time collecting evidence, going to the scene of the crime, interviewing people.
So you testifying in trial, you get $2,000, correct?
For all of the work that I've done on this case, that's right, I'm compensated for my time.
And you were already paid by the defense $5,000, correct?
That's right, already been paid.
So regardless of the outcome of this case, you're gonna walk out of here with $7,000, correct?
That's right, regardless of the outcome.
Going back to your reconstruction, you based your conclusions on statements, correct?
No, not entirely.
You based it on statements, affidavits, and reports, correct?
Well, no, I personally went to the actual scene of the accident, took photographs, did my own personal investigation, went to the police impound, looked at the car myself.
But you didn't go to the scene of, you wasn't there at the scene of the accident September 25th, correct?
No, I wasn't.
You weren't called by the defense until October 10th, correct?
That sounds about right, I take your word for it.
Okay, and you said in your direct that with Officer Foster, he was kind of off a little bit in regards to the speed because he came to the scene a couple of hours after, correct?
Well, I would hardly say that he was kind of off in his conclusions. He pretty severely overestimated how fast the Miss Dawson was probably going. And it was for more than just because he went back a few hours later.
But that's what you stated in your direct, correct?
Yeah, that is one of the several reasons, that's right.
But again, you were not at the scene of the crash on September 25th, correct?
No, I wasn't.
And you didn't talk to any of the witnesses, correct?
No, I didn't.
So you didn't talk to Danny Dawson, right?
No, I didn't personally talk to her.
You didn't talk to Taylor Hobson, correct?
No,
You didn't talk to any of the EMTs that were there that night?
no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No direct, no redirect, we just asked the witness to be excused.
As the defense any comments?
Your Honor, at this point, the defense really does rest its case in chief. May we have several minutes of recess before closing arguments?
Let's go ahead and make it straight up at 5 o'clock.